so when last we left off, you were making your way back to your lair? Lab? Lairb?
Lairb.
Lairb. With Warwick. And you were going to try to figure out what basically what was going on. Because Warwick does not remember the last few months very clearly. Seems to be under the impression that someone was basically taking control of him in his altered werewolf state in order to pursue some nefarious goal, the specifics of which are undetermined at this point. So
Maybe or maybe not the woo-woo guy that's made him into the war dog he is today.
Exactly. Also, I have to say, I'm glad that I appreciate that you appreciated the fact that his last name is Lupin, because, of course, it's comic books. That their real name has to hint at their powers or their heroic identity in some fashion. Also, I got to introduce the character who I mentioned yesterday, whose name I did not expect to not be taken. I introduced her in KJ's finale, and her name is Hornet. So she's Hornet themed.
Love it.
Yeah, so I was like, I could not believe that hadn't been used by any comic book characters yet. So
No, I guess there's just a green hornet and that's something else.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I think I'm very pleased with that. Anyways, so I get your cards back, and we're going to open on the second issue on the lab. Warwick is sitting there, is currently under the very intense, very suspicious watch of 3 raccoons that are all like they're just stock still, just staring at him, just waiting to see what he does. And he's kind of sitting there, not necessarily nervously, but definitely awkward and uncomfortable.
Also, surely though.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're gonna open. So the major question is, what would you like to do?
So, this is my lab. It's not much, I know, but it's home. Stay here while you're sorting your head out or whatever.
I appreciate that. Definitely being underground means I don't have to worry about any moonlight hitting me, so it makes me feel better.
Those folks I mentioned earlier that you inadvertently started wailing on, they might come by and you might have to explain yourself to them, but I'll try and paint you in a good light.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be the first time I've had to make amends for something that I did when I wasn't exactly 100% work, so...
They're good kids, really. Just, watch out for the one called Coyote. He's a bit of I call him a bad seed.
He kind of pauses for a second. He says, Coyote. I'm not sure why, but something about that's ringing a bell. It's kind of a vague memory of a smell. I think I might have met him.
Okay, well... I mean, they all run together, but, I just don't like that one.
Okay.
They're not bad kids, they just, they got the whole not looking entirely human sort of thing going on, and you know how that works out.
It tends to lead to a bit of a chip on your shoulder, I imagine, so...
Sure. Anyway, I'd like to take a few more samples of your blood, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. I don't see that being necessarily a problem.
I'm very curious about your DNA.
He, he moves over and kind of like puts his arm out so you can draw some blood, and
Yeah. Samples.
doesn't seem particularly concerned about it.
Flip some hair as well. Do different samples.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I won't ask for a urine or a stool sample.
He says, well, that's good because, well, I guess TMI, but after I change back, I tend to be stopped up for a day or two, so...
Oh, that does not sound pleasant.
It's not fun, but... Anyways,
Okay. Anyway, you can make a... There's a beat-up old couch over there. You can sit on that if you want. Try and relax a little. I'm just gonna get on with some work. If you think of anything else you can tell me about this guy who fixed you, then, yeah, just let me know.
alright, yeah, I'll think on it. And he goes over to kind of take a nap.
I'm gonna send a message to Cardinal and say I got Warwick back safely to the lab, and I believe he is neutralized and will not cause any more problems as long as he stays away from the moonlight or whatever triggered him before gets in here somehow.
Okay. She responds back with K and a thumbs up.
How is Oxen doing?
Better. He's sitting up. He had a bit of an appetite, so we got him some food. And she sends you a picture of Oxen sitting there with like three of the 1 quart sized soup containers from like a Chinese restaurant. There's wonton soup in one, and there's a couple different kinds of soup in the others. And he just looks happy as a clam.
He's a big boy with a healthy appetite.
Yeah, we're gonna try to minimize the solid foods, but he refused to stay on a liquid diet, so this is our compromise. So yeah. Okay, so what exactly is it you want to do with the samples? Are you trying to sort of just like cross-reference them with the initial samples, or?
Yeah, I really want to try and nail down a bit more about what's up with this guy's DNA. Although I do suspect that if he has been altered in means beyond my understanding, then I might not get much more out of it. But you never know. I'm firmly convinced. I think Dr. Scott is firmly convinced there's a scientific rationale behind everything. Ultimately,
I mean, magic is just science that we can't explain, right?
exactly.
So, okay. Go ahead and give me an intellect action based on your genetics skill. Now, you happen to have an edge card, so you can play that 1 and then play the 7. And so that gives you an 8 instead of a 7, and then you still draw the top card of the deck.
Okay, I see you do it that way around. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay, that's what I'll do.
Okay. So 12 and your intellect of 9 is a 21. All right, that number's coming up a lot in the last couple episodes. KJ got a 21 like 4 times in his episode.
Lucky number.
Yeah, it is. All right, go ahead and draw your 2 cards back. So yeah, you spent a little bit of time kind of poring over this, and you managed to synthesize this one of your serums. before you're able to really kind of fully pull all of your results together, though, your honor guard of possums all suddenly kind of like they all kind of stand up straight and kind of look at the door, and they kind of like hunch their shoulders a little bit, and they kind of scurry off into like the corners of their room with like kind of a hiss.
What's going on?
And that is about all the warning you get before the door essentially gets blown off its hinges. A trio of blockade soldiers comes in through the door. They've got their guns kind of like at the ready, and they kind of like come in. They clear the room, and one of them's pointing their gun at you. Is like, "Don't move."
Hey, what's all this about? This is private property.
At which point, a youngish man, probably in his like early 30s, steps in, and he doesn't have a helmet on, unlike the others. His armor is basically the same, but it looks like he's got like a mark, like kind of on his left breast of the uniform that indicates that he's some sort of like supervisor, like higher ranking than the others.
Tell me what all this is about. I got rights, you know.
Says, undoubtedly, yes. But is this private property? It seems as if it's in a public area and doesn't have any ownership. At least none that we could find on file.
Fine, you got me. So what? What's it to you, blockade boys?
Well, the City of Portland still doesn't have a union in place, and so Blockade Securities has jurisdiction on any extra-human matters that might need attending to. There were reports of a beast of some sort that was responsible for a few attacks locally, and we tracked him here. Well, we tracked it here.
How'd you know it was a him?
He says eyewitness reports, and he kind of like
Yes,
looks
they
at
look close around here. The beasts.
he kind of looks at two of the guys and kind of like gestures for them to go and search like the adjoining room where Warwick is like kind of taking a nap.
You know, you ain't gonna find anything here beastly other than me. You think I did it?
He says, No, we're well briefed on the eccentric wildlife here in Portland. This specimen is new.
Well, no one here except my cousin.
Cousin. Okay. There is a brief sound of a scuffle in the other room. Immediately following which, one of the guards comes like basically it's thrown back through the door that they just entered from, and his helmet's like cracked and like the top of it's kind of split off. He looks like he's unconscious, and Warwick comes in. He's got one of the other guy like kind of he's holding him across his chest, facing you guys like a human shield, and he's got the guy's rifle kind of like propped up on the guy's shoulder, and he kind of comes in and says, "How we doing, Doc?" But he's watching the blockade guys.
Warwick, these nice gentlemen are looking for a beast. I said, there isn't anyone like that around here.
The remaining blockade guy, like the grunt, that like has turned and like has his gun trained on Warwick, but the other guy, the officer, is sort of staying relatively calm and says, "Not bad. You have. Are you looking for a job?" He says to Warwick, and Warwick just kind of like scoffs and ignores him. He just kind of like defers to you to continue the conversation. And the blockade guy after he doesn't get an answer, looks back at you and says, "We have it on good authority that the person we're looking for is here."
Whose authority?
I'm afraid I'm not high enough ranked to be privy to that information.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. It's just me and my cousin here. I could send some of my friends to have a look if you want.
Says, "All right.
Hey.
I don't want to do this the hard way, but if I have to, we can always come back with animal control and several warrants."
I told you you can look around, but there ain't nobody here. There's a lot of tunnels in Portland. This creature could be anywhere. Why don't you tell me exactly what you're looking for, and I'll keep an eye out. Give me a number, and I'll call if I see anything.
So he's getting ready to, he kind of processes that for a second. He's getting ready to respond, at which point there is a bit of noise from out in the tunnel, outside, and he kind of stops and starts to turn, and let's see, hold on. So a very large individual, probably about 6'6", pretty broad-shouldered, wearing very archaic-looking, full plate armor. Kind of comes barreling through the door and shoulder checks the blockade guy, who goes sprawling into the room. And the guy in armor kind of straightens up and kind of slowly scans the room, and then when he sees Warwick, he gestures like he's drawing a sword, and a big blade of basically pure light kind of manifests in his hand, and he says, "You're the one that's been looking for me." And we're gonna go ahead and drop into combat rounds, as this guy is clearly not too thrilled to see Warwick. He clearly does not intend on being diplomatic with Warwick. So, yeah, stuff is kicking off. So yeah, this guy is relatively smart. Warwick is kind of smart. So the blockade soldiers are going to. I think the one that still has his gun is going to shoot at the guy in the armor. The one that just got thrown to the ground is going to pop up and is going to try and free his buddy from Warwick. And
Warwick, put the good man down.
Warwick is also going to shoot the guy in the armor. So the guy in the armor is going to try and subdue Warwick. What are you who's your target? What are you planning on doing?
Okay. I think the unarmored blockades guy is probably more trouble than he's worth, but the guy in the armor, does he just have a big ass sword?
Yeah. It's like I said, it's a fairly large sword of kind of pure light.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a hard choice. I think I am going to try and I'm going to try and be as innocuous as possible, and for once, and just try and make my way slowly behind the guy with the big ass sword of light.
Okay.
Yeah. because I really don't fancy facing off against a huge burly guy with the sword in armor.
Go ahead and so I know you were trying to stay out of the armored guy's way. What exactly are you planning on doing to the blockade guy? You said he was kind of the.
No, I've changed my.
Oh, okay.
I've changed my mind because that guy's not armed, is he? The guy that's doing Warwick.
Not as far as you can tell.
No, okay. Warwick seems pretty martially capable, whereas I am not. So I'm just gonna try and make my way behind the armored guy, because I reckon I'll be able to do more if I'm not having to face against him directly.
Okay, so you're basically kind of keeping yourself out of the fight for the moment until you get into a better position.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, things will just proceed apace. So here's what happens. The blockade guy that shoots at the dude in armor, like bullets kind of ping, ricochet, don't seem to really phase him at all. Same thing with Warwick, because he kind of like unloads on the guy as well as he kind of aims the sword at him. The guy raises the sword and is getting ready to kind of swing it down, regardless of the fact that there is a blockade guy in the way. When the officer basically kind of he kind of teleports, grabs onto his fellow blockade guy, and then kind of teleports away. So it's a quick blink, and suddenly he's on the other side of the room, and they're both kind of reeling a little bit, kind of trying to catch their balance from the very quick kind of turnaround.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Am I out of the sight of the armored guy now?
You're behind him. He's not focused on you. He's not even really focused on the other dude that's shooting at him. He's just focused on Warwick.
Okay.
He hits Warwick with the sword, and it kind of it seems like it cleaves right through him, although it doesn't actually cut him open. But there is a sort of a scorching effect across the shirt that he's wearing, and Warwick kind of calls out in pain. And midway through this kind of cry, it warps into more of a guttural howl, and it seems as if this sword strike causes Warwick to start shifting into that wolf form. He kind of drops the gun and stumbles back, and it's very clearly on the imminent that's what's going to happen. So we will go into the next round, and okay. That is a lot of strength cards for the other guys. So you're fairly tight confines of this lab. Some of your glass beakers and your lab equipment is been broken under this hail of ricocheting bullets. And you now have an enraged wolfman, some weird D&D character on steroids, and a couple of professional mercenaries that are all basically getting ready to throw down in this room. So I think that one of the blockade guys, the one that got teleported, is going to try to grab the other gun that's laying on the floor. And then the two of them are going to shoot. One's going to shoot at Warwick. The other guy's going to continue shooting at the dude in armor. Kind of standard, comic book mooks. Just shooting guns, even though it's not really effective. The other guy is going to kind of keep an eye on things. He seems like he's being more reactive than he is aggressive. So he's kind of just keeping an eye on things. Warwick, or more accurately, War Dog, and the guy in armor are basically going to throw down. So it kind of is, you're kind of left free to do what you want at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to try and get hold of some of my samples, I guess.
Okay.
Including a refresh of my nullification serum.
Okay.
and regeneration one, and I'm gonna grab the horns one that I got from oxen previously.
Okay. All right. Are you going to try to use one, or are you just kind of like snatching them off of your
Guess
workbench?
I mean, in the chaos, I guess I'm just snatching them and trying to keep my head down from the bullets and whatnot.
Okay.
Stay. I
Give
want to see
me.
how this fight goes.
Fair enough. Give me an agility action, please.
Okay. Draw a card.
Yes, that is agility, so you get to draw the next card on the deck and add it to it. Okay. So we'll discard those. Oops, that's not what I want to do. All right. So you kind of like, you dart behind the guy in the armor. I'll just let you know. His name is Bulwark because it's going to be a lot easier to call him that than it is the guy in the armor all the time. So you dart behind Bulwark, and then as everybody kind of like chooses their targets and everybody kind of ignores you, you take the opportunity to kind of like dash through the melee and grab your samples off the counter. As you do that, one of the blockade guards, the ones that's like getting ready to shoot at Warwick, he is basically not really paying attention to the fact that you're in the line of fire, and he looks like he's getting ready to shoot. At which point Venkman like launches himself out of the from behind whatever he was hiding behind, and like sort of like just lands on the guy's gun and kind of like throws his balance off. And the guy kind of like swears, "What the hell was that?" And then Venkman like skitters away and hides underneath one of the tables.
Boy, Venkman.
Venkman clearly was like, "Yeah, no, I know what those things are capable of, and I don't want her getting shot." And yeah, so War Dog seems to have a little bit of an upper hand against the Knight. Like the Knight again kind of swings with his sword. War Dog like ducks underneath it, like leaps on the guy, and his claws are like kind of like rending into the armor. They're not fully puncturing it, but definitely if given enough time, he would make his way through this armor. The one officer, the blockade officer, seems like he's more focused on keeping his guys alive. He waits for an opening and then kind of teleports to the unconscious guy and then teleports back so that they're back on the other side of the room, and there's like the two guys with the guns are kind of between him and everybody else.
Does he have some sort of teleportation power, or does this look like some sort of teleporting tech? Nice.
Let's see. You know what? Because you've got super physiology, this does not look like a power. This looks like it's something built into the armor.
Fancy armor.
Yeah, so lots of chaos. For the most part, the honor guard are like hanging out, hiding behind pieces of equipment and such. Minus Venkman's like kind of last minute save, but yeah, that's kind of what's going on. Once the blockade guys have like the three of them, the officer is kind of like shouts a couple orders like pull in tight, we're getting out of here, and they kind of like start to fall back in the room to like get closer to him.
What? You just gonna leave me here?
He says, like you said, it's private property.
Guys.
Sorry, say that again?
Goddamn blockade guys. All the same.
Yeah, he says, like you said, it's private property. And then they all three of them like blink away.
Right. Okay, I guess I'm just left with this chaos and these two people fighting here. if it looks like I'm gonna observe the fight essentially. If it looks like War Dog is in imminent danger, I will probably inject myself with the horns sample and try and duff the guy in the back. But if it looks like he's gonna win, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. But if it looks like War Dog's about to trash the guy, I might take the opportunity to get behind him and get ready to inject him with another sample of the nullification serum.
Okay. So
Basically hedging my bets here on what's my best option, because I'm not really a big fighter or anything like that.
that makes sense. Yeah, so Warwick is basically like he's sort of climbed up onto the guy, and so he's like his back feet, his claws have like hooked into the guy's like armor, and so he's sort of like got one arm on the guy's shoulder and using the other arm to kind of like just slash at this guy's like kind of like the gorget he's wearing to protect his neck. And Bulwark kind of manages to get an arm underneath him and like flings him across the room, and it's like kind of like weaves a symbol in the air with his sword, and this kind of like construct of light leaps out and like wraps around Warwick and kind of like pins him in place where he lands. So the guy like kind of strides forward and he starts to raise his sword.
Okay, that's my cue then. I'm going to inject myself with the horns sample and try and just gore him in the back.
Okay. So that will be a strength action, because that's what horns is based on. You don't have an appropriate skill, but that's okay, because you have a boost card. Okay. And don't forget, you can always push, which means you play a card in addition to whatever your normal card play is, and you just don't draw that extra card back.
Okay,
so
yeah.
That's an option.
Let's do that then. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Makes sense. Push.
So that will... and you can only... there are rules for how often you can do that, but we'll get into it later.
Okay.
But you're going to go ahead and draw the top card of the deck and add it to that, because that is the appropriate suit.
Ooh.
And it's another strength card, so we're going to do that again.
Awesome.
And a 6. Oof, okay. So
as he's about this time, I guess I go, and this horns sprout from my head. I go, "Hey, Bozo! The Ren Fair's next month!" And just ram myself into his back.
okay, so that's an 11, that's a 20, plus your strength of 4 and horns you copy at the intensity of your power duplication, so 11, so 20, 31, 35. I think that might be the highest action score anybody's achieved yet, but I could be wrong about that. So just for the sake of putting this into perspective, the difficulty scale in the game basically increases in increments of 4. So 0 is an automatic, 4 is easy, 8 is average. The scale, like the descriptors stop at 40, but obviously the difficulty scale and the possible scores go above that if you get like super lucky, like crazy lucky. But the game considers 40 to be impossible, quote unquote. So you got a 35 out of 40. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So here's what happens, because he's already been slashed up a bit. So yeah, okay. So yeah, you inject yourself, and there's this moment of like, kind of, it almost feels like someone is like yanking on your head as like these horns kind of like sprout and like grow, and like it's very kind of weird, like sudden extra weight that you have to adjust for. But the wonderful thing about your serum, especially for you, because you've perfected it to kind of work with your DNA, is that everything kind of like rights itself fairly quickly, and you kind of line up, lower your head, and you hit him so hard that A, you dent his armor, B, he kind of like bends in half backwards, and C, he goes flying through the stone wall of your little lab area, leaves a huge crater in the wall, like dust, debris, like some of the tile and concrete like falls out, and he does not move.
You're paying for that wall, too. God damn it. It's the light thing surrounding War Dog disappear.
It does. Go ahead and draw your card back, and...
Oh, it's all doom!
Oh, no. That's okay. I'm sure it'll be fine. So that happens, and the light that's sort of restricting War Dog's movement, kind of fades, and he immediately bounds up to his feet and kind of like snarls and looks at Bulwark, and then kind of like whips his head around to look at you, and kind of he hesitates for like a half a second. What are you gonna do?
Hey, easy there. You remember me, I'm a friend. Can I try manipulating him, or would it be a leadership thing, maybe? I don't know.
Leadership, you know what? Sure, I'll allow leadership. Yeah. So it would be a willpower action using the leadership skill.
Unfortunately, I only have these Doom cards, but that's the breaks, so...
I love Doom cards.
I know you do.
Hello, my pretty. Okay. So,
7 Doom.
plus a 9 of... you know what? I drew a card to check to see how Warwick would respond this turn. Minus any other factors. And the card event was blind obedience. So I think I'm gonna lean into that. Your score is pretty damn good. Maybe not enough to normally like shake him out of this frenzy that he's in, but I think your score coupled with the event, I think he does kind of like sort of settle and kind of calm down. He kind of snarls a little bit and like takes a couple steps backwards and sort of like lowers himself down like not quite onto his haunches, but as if he's ready to pounce if need be, but he's easing off.
There's a good boy. Say. I get kind of low myself and look as unthreatening as possible.
Okay. Let's see. So yeah, Warwick, when you say good boy, Warwick kind of like his hackles kind of rise a little bit and his ears flatten and he kind of growls a bit. He doesn't get aggressive with you. He just, something about that phrase doesn't seem to sit very well with him. That's basically what he's letting you know. But yeah.
I try a different tactic. Good soldiers follow orders.
Okay. You know what? All right. Yeah, that is very insightful. So yeah, that'll get him to fully kind of settle down, and as you can kind of see like his posture, his body language kind of like easing down, and as that happens, his form seems to kind of like shrink and kind of kind of return to normal until he's kind of like basically just kneeling on this concrete floor, and he kind of like takes a breath and he looks around and he says, "I think we won."
Yeah, but you any good with knots, Boy Scout? Cause that guy's still alive somehow.
He says, "Yeah, let me see." He kind of like starts looking around for any kind of like rope or restraints or anything that you might have. He says his sword I think it's some manifestation of moonlight, which is inconvenient, to say the least.
Yeah, he hurt you at all?
He, like, his shirt is obviously like shredded, like it's gone. But there is definitely what looks to be it's like a really, really bad sunburn, basically across his chest where the sword hit him, like his shoulder and his chest where the sword hit him.
I got something that can help with that, if you let me.
He's like, yeah, unless it's that silver sulfacetamide cream. That doesn't react. I don't react well to that.
No, it's much better than that.
Although, oddly enough, that's just an actual, like, an allergy that I've had since I was a kid. That's nothing to do with the werewolf thing.
Well, I guess fate had a plan for you.
I guess. He'll go and kind of sit down. Or, well, he's working on getting this guy, like, bound up. He probably takes, like, some of the power cables from some of the ruined equipment and stuff like that, and kind of, like, kind of rips them out of the unit and uses that to bind his feet and his hands.
I think he's gonna look around in despair a little bit and go, "Oh, jeez, it took me ages to get all this stuff together."
I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to visit any trouble on you.
Oh, hey, those blockade boys did more damage than you, bastards.
Yeah, they're
You know what? It's time this city had a union. This would never happen if there was a union.
You're probably not wrong. Actually,
damages to this place.
Speaking of union, first off, go ahead and draw your missing card back. Yeah, exactly. And speaking of union, you now that things have kind of settled a little bit, you realize that this bulwark guy, this guy in the armor, he is sort of infamous because he's a member of a group of superheroes, super quote-unquote heroes, called the Scabs. Basically, they are very vocally anti-union superheroes that are akin to mercenaries. Like, they'll show up and save people, like, in a disaster or whatever, but they tend to sort of, like, resort to coercion and extortion to get those people to pay them or compensate them for what they've done.
Presumably they don't take any responsibility for the extreme havoc they cause in their actions either.
Generally not. However, there is actually one member of the group that tends to be a little bit more like a little bit more conscious of those things. He's kind of their spokesman. He's a fairly young, like, speedster kid that seems to legitimately believe that what they're doing is actually helping people, and he kind of just justifies the whole, like, well, we need to pay our expenses because nobody else is going to do it. So he's, I don't know. It's difficult to say whether he's misguided or he's kind of like an oblivious douche or what the case is with this kid. But he's, he may be more or less a good person, may not.
What's his name? What does he go by, at least, if I don't know his real name?
He doesn't... He has tried a couple dozen different names, and none of them seem to have stuck.
I'm just going to call him Speedy for now.
Right now, he is going by Zip.
Zip, okay.
Yeah. Whether or not that remains the case, who knows, but for now. So yeah, that that about this bulwark guy. He's fairly high, like, not like super high profile, but definitely been in the news along with this team. And especially since you've kind of been around and being, kind of paying attention to superhero circles for a while, you would know that about him.
Okay. Hey, Warwick, you know who this guy is?
Uh, the Tin Man?
Might as well be. Name's Bulwark. He's a member of the Scabs. You heard of them?
Yeah, in passing. I don't tend to work on U.S. soil very much, so current events isn't exactly my forte around here. At least not in pop culture terms.
I sure as hell gonna make them pay for all this damage. If I can nail him down. I don't know if I can.
Says, well, I'll do what I can to help you with that if you need it, but...
Well, I like to think they pay to get their guy back, but, I don't wanna have him coming around bothering you again.
Actually, on that note, I think it's probably best if... Like, he kind of looks around and finds a clock that's still functioning, and he kind of glances at the time and says, I think it's best... Sun's going to be rising here soon. I think it's best if I go my own way. At least for a little bit. I don't want to draw any more attention to you. He kind of like looks around, and you're not quite sure what he's looking for at first. And then he pulls open a drawer and pulls out like a bag of like snacks or whatever. And he kind of shakes it and he goes in, like he's trying to find your raccoons. So they slowly come out one by one. He gives them all a treat. He says, okay, I think we're all present and accounted for.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not a bad guy, is he, guys?
Dolly still seems like she's not entirely convinced, but she readily accepts the treats nonetheless.
Hey, Warwick, hang on a minute. I'm gonna go into a drawer and it's like, I'll open the drawer and there'll be like a bunch of burner phones in there. And I'm gonna just pull one out and I'm gonna give it to him. I'm just gonna say, my number's already in there. You get in any more trouble, you need my help, you want to talk, just give us a call.
Yeah, sure. Hey, can I get Cardinal's number? I'd like to apologize to him. Maybe we can help each other out.
Okay, I'll see if she wants. I gotta message her first.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, you've got my number now, so.
That's true.
I'm
gonna
okay.
Message her and see if that's okay.
All right. She does eventually get back to you and says, like, sure, that's fine, but not immediately. Sorry,
I'm gonna warn her that the blockade guys have been snooping about the tunnels and the sewers recently, and that my lab's a mess.
She replies with a like, "Damn, I knew I couldn't trust those guys."
Also, if you guys want a job, I got someone down here, someone else who might be a use to us.
The only response you get to that is 3 question marks. In the meantime, Warwick, he kind of gathers together a few things. Like, he apologetically steals a bag of snacks, kind of like tucks it into his pocket without asking.
This whole place is done for now anyway. I'm gonna have to spend weeks setting back up.
He says, I'm really sorry about that. If I see anything that I think might be useful to you, I'll make sure to let you know.
Thanks, Wack. You're a real mensch.
He kind of gives you like a mock salute, and says, "Thanks again, Doc. I'll be in touch." And he leaves.
Scott sighs, looks around helplessly, and then starts sweeping up as best she can and salvaging whatever equipment might have not been destroyed in the conflict, and occasionally checking to make sure that Bulwark remains unconscious and that his bonds are suitably secure.
Maybe about half an hour later, you're kind of straightening things up, and you hear you hear people kind of down the tunnel a little ways, and it sounds like there's a fairly tense conversation going on. The voices are kind of echoing. It's hard to make out exactly what they're saying until they get a bit closer. At which point you hear a woman basically like kind of berating somebody, and says, "Quite frankly, Lieutenant, I don't care what was going on here. This individual is this individual is a prospective member of the Union, and therefore you don't actually have any jurisdiction over them at this point in time." And like as this kind of conversation gets closer, the guy that was teleporting his soldiers out shows up with a woman who is probably mid 40s ish, maybe just like a little bit of kind of gray in her like black hair. She's a little bit heavier set, kind of very very fair skinned lady, and she walks in with this officer right behind her, and like 6 blockade troopers that all have their guns kind of like holstered and hanging down, like not as if they're threatening anybody. Are all kind of like crowding the door outside, but they don't come in.
Doc puts her hands on her hips and just says, "Well, look who it is. You come to finish the job. You didn't break enough stuff the first time."
He kind of ignores that and says, "Actually, we were here to apprehend you and your friend, but..." He kind of like looks at the woman that's with him and says, "But apparently right now that's not on the table. So instead," he gestures at Bulwark and says, "We're going to be taking him into custody for assaulting a blockade officer."
Sure, get him out of here. He's only gonna cause me more trouble.
The other 6 guys come in, they like kind of secure him, and they start to haul him out, and
Pay a premium for sorting him out for use.
they say, "Sorry, we don't pay contractor fees."
Of course you don't.
Who's
it?
The woman that's with kind of like waits for the conversation to run its course, and then she kind of steps forward and she offers you her hand and says, "My name's Deirdre Fitzpatrick. I'm with the Union."
Dr. Scott narrows her eyes briefly and like looks at the hand suspiciously, and then very gingerly takes it. Pleased to meet you, I guess.
She says, "No. You don't have to be. It won't bother me one way or the other. I'm here to extend an offer." She kind of like looks around at the kind of disaster area that is the lab. She says, "It seems to me you're in need of new facilities."
"Well, ain't that convenient?" said suspiciously.
She says, "I won't lie, it is. But just because it's convenient doesn't mean it isn't going to be beneficial for both of us."
Sure. Okay, what are you offering?
Well, the Union has deep pockets, and we are capable of putting together a facility where you can actually... She kind of like looks around again and says, "Actually make some progress in whatever it is you do here, rather than constantly worrying about whether your equipment's going to work, whether the power is going to work, whether or not rodents are going to chew through the wiring." When she says rodents, she kind of like looks at the raccoons that are like clustered in the corner, munching on the snacks that they were given.
Skillful assistance, I'll have you know. Don't you go defaming them.
Say that again?
Don't you go defaming them.
That's slander. She says, "Fine. I'm sure we can find space for your assistance as well. But the Union is in need of someone to round out the roster here in Portland. Someone with a bit more experience than our current stable of recruits. Someone with a more worldly eye, let's say."
What, you just got a bunch of kids together, didn't you? All idealistic and shit.
You're not wrong.
Give me a day, I'll have a think about it.
Perfect. She puts the briefcase that she's carrying on like one of the workbenches. Like some glass from some test tube kind of like crunches underneath it as she sets it down fairly heavily. She clicks it open, pulls out a packet of some papers and a pen just in case, and she hands you the envelope and says, "Feel free to read it over, sign it. The union vote's going through. Well, the vote is scheduled to happen tomorrow night. It's most likely going to pass, but best to have it signed before then, because once the vote does pass, well, we've got a flood of applications. We have to go through all of them before we can offer a position. It's a whole thing."
So you're giving me an early foot in the door.
We prefer... Dr. Heather Scott, PhDs in, I believe it's genetics, biology, biochemistry, and an emphasis on superphysiology, if I remember correctly, according to your file. Previously East Coast, but moved out here with, I believe it was TechMat was your previous employer prior to some sort of mishap in the workplace?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how you know so much about me, even that I'm still alive.
Well, the union makes it a point to be aware of any powered individuals operating within a certain jurisdiction, especially if a branch is looking at being formed, a chapter is looking at being formed in that area. As for the second part, well, the union has a very strict policy about confidentiality, so you needn't worry about that.
Kind of going through the contract with their not entirely expert eye, but the meticulous eye of a scientist anyway, as the woman speaks. Yeah, what did you say your name was again?
Deirdre Fitzpatrick. She reaches into like the breast pocket of her blazer and she hands you a business card.
Irish, huh?
My parents were.
Okay. I'll get back to you tomorrow morning. But I really need to clean up in here. Make sure these boys don't bother me anymore.
Why? At this point, it doesn't look any different from any of the meth labs that are down here. Besides, if you sign the paperwork, you'll be moving out anyways.
I don't sign anything until I've read it thoroughly. Oh, and another thing. You don't work with TechMat, do you?
No. The union has a very strict policy on not getting involved with corporate sponsorships or what's the term I'm looking for?
Conflicts of interest?
Yeah, she basically she says it's considered a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Actually, fairly common knowledge in this setting, in this universe, at least in the U.S., is that members of the Vigilantes Union are specifically barred from taking corporate sponsorships or anything like that. Like you can't even do a YouTube commercial for like Clash of Clans or anything like that. It's a huge thing.
Okay. I'll be able to continue my research.
Absolutely. You may want to look at page 84, the subsection in there regarding proprietary and innovative technologies designed as a member of the union.
Click to that page and see what my rights and obligations are in that regard.
It's fairly... So it's actually not terribly surprising. It's sort of in line with like some of the big tech companies that you've worked for, like TechMat and things like that, in that the union basically says if you develop a new technology or a new scientific process or anything like that, using union facilities and resources as a member of the union, that before you can like patent it for yourself or anything like that, you have to basically bring it to the union, and they get first. Like they're supposed to get the first opportunity to like basically buy the patent off of you. Not that they don't necessarily demand it, but you are contractually obligated to at least go through the process with them of them deciding if they want to buy it, making you an offer, and then kind of going through the negotiations. And there's like a whole arbitration clause and yada yada yada. Like it's a lot of legalese, but generally speaking, it does put them at a slight advantage. But they're not necessarily trying to be like, anything you create is ours automatically. So,
other than that, what you want me to do? You want me to mend all these kids? Because I might not be the best role model.
actually, I think you are the perfect person to act as the head of this particular chapter. You've been in Portland for a number of years, close to a decade is what our findings show. And during that time, you've more or less kept your head down. You haven't gone and blown up any buildings in the guise of trying to save people. But you are helping people. We can't necessarily condone the full breadth of your patient list, but by and large, you seem to be wanting to do good, and you do it in a way that doesn't endanger dozens of civilians, which I have a certain begrudging respect for.
I just don't want any trouble. Don't read too much into it.
If you didn't want trouble, you shouldn't have become a superhero.
I mean, didn't really have much of a choice. But that's a discussion for another day. Okay, Miss Fitzpatrick, you got yourself a deal. I'll sign your papers. Sign in. Whatever else.
Sign here, sign there, initial here, sign there, sign there. Yeah, it's a lot of writing.
You happy you got what you came for? I take it someone will be in touch.
Absolutely. You can stop by the office anytime tomorrow or later, and assuming the vote passes, which polling indicates that it will, we'll be sure to have an access badge for you, and we'll get some of the preliminary facilities set up for you. She kind of like looks through some of the equipment you've got, like like a specimen storage, like centrifuge, microscopes, a couple computer terminals, and she kind of like lists off a number of things and says that should at least be enough to get you started. Yes.
Yeah, I want an ice cream freezer as well.
I'll make sure there's one in the break room. And with that, she kind of clicks her briefcase closed and says, actually, she doesn't say anything. She just turns and she walks out.
That's, I guess Dr. Scott just stands there blinking, looking a little bit bewildered at everything that's happened in the past few hours. Decides it's a bit much, puts her comfy desk chair upright, sighs a little bit as she sees like one of the legs has come off and it's leaning at a funny angle, and just kind of slumps into it with a sigh and strokes whatever possum comes to see her first. What a day, boys and girls. Wild.
I think at some point I might have accidentally said raccoons instead of possums. I meant possums. Doesn't matter. Yeah, Petey. So Dolly is the one that jumps up into your lap. Petey comes over a minute later because you said ice cream, and he has the very sticky, very messy remnants of an ice cream sandwich wrapper, and he kind of like waddles over and hands it to you.
Oh, thanks, Petey. That's sweet of you. Well, looks like we got a new place to stay. How did you like the sound of that?
I like to imagine that in the comic book, it Like that's the last panel of a page, and the next page, the last page of the comic is like a full page image of Dr. Scott standing in the middle of a very pristine, kind of like sterile white lab with possums that are just getting into everything. And there's some like administrative assistant that's just like kind of slightly panicking at the quote unquote rodents that are
I'm probably facing them, and I've got that. I'm forming that gesture in that picture.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's an excellent kind of end to that.
Great.
The union certainly wasn't expecting a bunch of possums when they went to sign you on, but they were expecting one possum, not.
But you get possums too.
Yeah, exactly. You get one possum, you get the rest. So, we introduced War Dog, Bulwark. Actually, it's the second member of the Scabs to show up in the introductory arcs. So, they may become more.
Damn Scabs.
Yeah, they might become more prominent in the story here coming up soon, but we'll have to wait and see.
I bet they love corporate sponsorship.
They would if they could get a corporate sponsorship. They probably do have corporate sponsorships from like some fairly indie companies that are like, they push the whole like question authority kind of vibe. So they probably do have a couple of sponsorships.
Excellent.
But yeah.
That was lots of fun. Forward
Excellent.
to the next exciting adventures of Dr. Scott and the Vigilantes.
So do I. Actually, why don't we do a quick outro if you want to say like a quick repeat of who you are and where you can be found, if there's anything you want to promote or anything like that with the audience.
Sure, I'm Mike Allind. I am a professional storyteller and historical interpreter from Scotland, but living in Newcastle, England. And I'm afraid you can't find me unless you come over here. But if you do happen to come over here, check out the Moss Troopers. We are storytellers extraordinaire, and this summer, every Wednesday, we'll be performing as part of the Myth Quest interactive adventure in the Great North Museum in Bangkok. But otherwise, you will catch me here at Fall on the Table on the Transverse, and I look forward to having you join us next time on Vigilantes Union.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. As always, I'm Ben Ravensdale. I've been the GM. You can find me here. You can also find me on Twitch at Stolen Fires. Every Monday night, I do a Dragon Age and a Curse of Strahd stream. And then on Thursday nights over on Stolen Fires, I'm going to be doing a new RPG called Public Access. And then in the very near future, I'm also going to be participating in a Mutants and Masterminds recorded superhero series with some of the team from Green Ronin. So that should be exciting. In the meantime, thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you in the next issue and the next adventure. Take care.